My brothers and sisters, chapter 251 of Jujutsu Kaisen was dark. What would have been an awesome display of fortitude, of mental and physical strength for our characters to realize their ambitions and ideals in this situation, despite all the odds, one character could change everything. When we needed him the most to lock in, he just could not do it. When asked to wake up and continue as your duty as a Jujutsu sorcerer, he took the easy way out. Megumi Fushiguro is just too far gone. He is done. And this very well may lead to some difficult choices that our sorcerers will have to make. Things are still not looking good for our cast right now, despite their resolve to save Megumi and kill Sukuna. The events of this chapter have spiraled out of control, and this was an insane chapter, even considering the pace that Gege has already been going down. The chapter opens up with Yuta using Sukuna's own cleave technique against him, and Yuta was able to copy this curse technique due to Yuta using the last remaining Sukuna finger. So I think now it's made clear that Yuta has to use a person's body part or blood or something in order to copy and use their own curse techniques. After Sukuna is cut by his own slashes, the cuts don't seem deep enough to pass through. However, Yuji and Yuta take full advantage of that opening and beat down on Sukuna. Yuji gets too close and Sukuna almost kills him with a direct cleave, but Yuji just keeps on going despite the damage that he's taken, just to keep healing, and he even spits out blood at Sukuna, which later he reveals that he controls this same blood. So now Yuji does in fact have blood manipulation. If you think about it, Yuji is like a cursed object himself, and he probably ingested the remaining cursed wombs. Yuji was taught by Choso and Kamo, and today he spits blood using a similar technique that Kamo's used on Naoya. So Yuji actually has a curse technique of his own, but even that's low-key not as exciting as Yuji possessing soul-seizing punches. That is something entirely different that he learned from reading Yuki's book on the soul. However, Yuji is determined to end everything right here, because this is like their last chance to actually save Megumi. Meanwhile, Sukuna is just brutally beaten and wailed down on. Yuji gets up and hits Sukuna with what looks like a manji kick. So now Sukuna is just getting severely beaten inside of this domain expansion, and he is the one that is now getting straight up pressured. So Sukuna opts to soldier it out, and he's going to counterattack by disabling Hollow Wicker Basket and just tanking Angel's sure hit of Jacob's Ladder. All of this in an effort to unleash his world bisecting dismantle. To stop this plan, Yuji, Yuta, and Rika hold Sukuna down, restricting 3 of his arms. Yuta is just not having any of it, as he punches through Sukuna's mouth and rips out Sukuna's lower mouth tongue brutally. He doesn't want to give Sukuna even a chance to cast incantations. And since Sukuna has been getting beaten down by Yuji, each hit dropping Sukuna's overall cursed energy output, Yuta decides to close in on Sukuna without fearing his slashes, since they have been watered down so much that Yuta can now tank them straight up. Yuta's sword rips Sukuna's face just wide open, and even one of Sukuna's arms is just flayed right off. But in this moment, Yuji actually activates the blood that was left on Sukuna's face and makes the blood explode, damaging Sukuna even further. We then enter a flashback to Yuji and Angel discussing how to best use her curse technique and what Yuji learned from researching Yuki's book on the soul. Yuji explains you can merge souls and change them like what Mahito does with his curse technique. However, in other cases, the merged souls will never become one. However, here, Angel's curse technique will erase the target's curse technique. A vessel like Megumi is directly tied to the cursed object Sukuna, so he's also tied to his personality and to his curse technique. However, since the curse technique is tied to the brain, the likelihood of the vessel's survival is low, since it would harm the vessel as well. However, if they use Yuji to separate the tuning of Megumi and Sukuna's souls so that they are split, then there is a much better chance of Megumi surviving and erasing Sukuna separately. Sukuna is now the one being pinned down by Yuji and Rika as Hollow Wicker Basket is undone, and Yuta hits Sukuna with a maximum output of Jacob's Ladder. It scorches Sukuna with a beam of radiance, and this attack literally tries to erase the curse object engraved inside of Megumi to wake Megumi up from the depths of despair, and Yuji hits Sukuna, telling Megumi it's time to wake up. Finally, Megumi appears sunken deep within Sukuna's soul. However, the damage has already been done. Yuji and everyone did everything perfectly. Their plan was completely in the right. However, after all of this time and the anguish after all the death and suffering, what does Megumi say to his friend who came all this way to save him? I've had enough. Megumi is completely done. His soul is shattered, his resolve is shattered, and he just no longer has the will to live on. After the deaths of his beloved sister Sumiki and his surrogate father and his sensei Gojo, Megumi can't do this anymore. And now, after having failed to save Megumi and wake him up from despair, Sukuna survives this Jacob Ladder attack, and then he finally calls out his curse incantations for the world bisecting dismantle. Then Yuta, Rika, and Yuji get bisected by this world dividing slash. However, just as Yuta's domain expansion breaks away, Sukuna is stabbed by Maki with the soul split katana, ending the chapter off with the demon possessing no cursed energy striking the one and only king of curses. Now this is very interesting. Maki's emergence is exactly how I pictured it. This is bar for bar just like Toji stabbing Gojo or how Maki stabbed Naoya. Even this basic strategy is effective against Sukuna, and at this point Sukuna is nerfed to oblivion. Yuji has constantly been nerfing his already falling cursed energy output. His cursed energy reserves have to be running lower, and he took some pretty serious damage within Yuta's domain expansion, with yet again low reverse curse technique healing output. As much as people would like to downplay Maki, I'm confident even she could fight this Sukuna nerfed the way that he is now. We are finally going to see the lengths that the soul split katana will reach, because by all means, if Maki swipes up, there's no real reason why Sukuna wouldn't just end up like Naoya, split straight through. This sword itself ignores all durability and simply will cut through the soul as long as she uses it. And then once the sword cuts, there's no telling if you can even use reverse curse technique to heal the damage already done. Even Maki specifically questions if reverse curse technique heals the cuts to the soul. Some may speculate, since Maki can see the soul of Megumi and Sukuna, then maybe she can pick and choose who to hit and single out Sukuna, but I'm not sure that it's going to work out like that, and I think our sorcerers are going to have to make a really tough choice soon. However, regarding Yuji and Yuta's conditions, if you consider Sukuna in the past while he was in Megumi, he just got done having a 13 chapter fight with Gojo. Low cursed energy output, he still had no domain expansion, he was heavily damaged from the purple, he was left with one working hand, he was just basically cooked with no way out, yet he still one-shot Gojo with this world slash, and I'll never forget those leaks, they were crazy. I would argue Sukuna used some type of binding vow to use that sort of slash, because there were no chants, no hand signs, nothing that we saw, especially considering what Sukuna needs now, having 4 arms, and what conditions he needs to fulfill in order to complete the world slash. So Sukuna was this weak, likely weaker than his hand transformation, and he's still just up in one-tapped Gojo, basically, who was at his peak. So now, nerfed as he may be, Sukuna technically should still be able to slash and kill Yuta and Yuji with this technique. And if you look at this particular dismantle and how it's portrayed a bit different than like it was against Kashimo, likely due to the cursed energy output drop, however, that shouldn't really matter, because you just cut existence or you don't. There's not really an in-between. So if Yuji and Yuta survive, there has to be a good explanation. And despite what I just said, I actually think that they will live, because they literally have to. Two main characters dying in this manner is completely understandable. I mean, it is Sukuna, the strongest sorcerer in history. Sukuna is just better than them. However, it still does not sit right to me, especially considering Yuji. Yuji 100% is alive. He has to be in fighting shape as well. And I love Maki and Hikari and the rest of the cast, but I do not think that we're going to leave it to them alone. I know at least Yuji is living and he's going to get his lick back. However, Yuta is a bit more of a peculiar case. If they both come out of this heavily wounded and at least alive, then that would mean that the cursed energy output of this slash was too low, which would have to mean that the slash that killed Gojo was special. Gege will have to make it make sense, which I trust he will, but for now they look like that they're going down for the count, and it's unclear if they just straight up died. Finally though, Megumi Fushiguro. I have a bit of a love-hate thing with Megumi because I would absolutely love for his character to grow, for Megumi to have his moment where he actually locks in. However, it is sad how pathetic Megumi has let himself become. But this is completely understandable. Megumi has been suffering for over a month with the death of his stepsister Sumiki, and now he has to deal with the loss of his beloved sensei Gojo, killed by his own hands. It is completely understandable for him to go through this and just lose all hope and give up. But the difference is that Megumi gave up on himself when it mattered. And Yuji was in a pathetic sort of state like this as well, and Yuji felt the same way in Shibuya. He didn't feel worthy to live on, and he lost his way. Unable to forgive himself, yet he was guided by Todo. Megumi doesn't have a Todo, yet Yuji was there for him. Yuji reached out to him. People died for Megumi's sake. They lost their lives to save his life. And really, this isn't just about Megumi's life, but the fate of the entire Earth. And when it came down to it, Megumi lost it. He just does not care anymore. As it turns out, you can only save those who are prepared to be saved. And it seems like Megumi is just done with life now. And that is why I said he was pathetic, because as a Jujutsu sorcerer, you never stop moving. Do not restrict yourself to that sort of narrow-mindedness. Despite those that you lost along the way, never stop. Megumi was just too naive in his effort to save Sumiki. That is all he cared about. That was his drive. So when she died, basically a part of Megumi died as well, and that sealed the deal. And now all the suffering that he takes on is just even more dread that sinks him further and further to where he can never come back. So now, if Megumi thinks this way now, if he lost his will to live over the fate of the world itself, there's only one thing to do. They have to kill Megumi Fushiguro. All this time, we're worried about Megumi's survival, his safety, always considering how to separate him from Sukuna. Yet how can they help Megumi if he won't do his part inside Sukuna's soul? They just have to kill him, or else Sukuna will destroy everything and everyone. I think that their next plan to defeat Sukuna would involve just killing him as a whole to eradicate Sukuna, Megumi and all. Hence why Maki is here with the soul split katana. It makes you think why Maki did not use her katana in chapter 215. There must be a reason why she didn't want to use it on Sukuna, and there's a reason why Maki specifically mentions if reverse curse technique can heal her sword slashes. So if worse comes to worse, they probably need Maki to execute Sukuna regardless of Megumi's safety. Of course, it likely will not be that easy. I already know folks probably look at Sukuna's smile at the end of the chapter like he's going to come up with something, but he's going to do that anyway. It's Sukuna. To me, this just signifies Sukuna is enjoying himself now that his life is actually on the line. And he's going to resist all of the students' efforts with his combat prowess. And I would like to see the students continue to give it their all. The only remarkable cast members are really like Yuji, Maki, Yuta, and Hikari, but now it looks like two are taken out of the equation now. So I can only hope that we still continue with them in the future of the story, because things are looking really bad right now. I would have loved to see Yuta lead the front lines with the rest of the heavy hitters, because it's always felt like things were set up that way. And if Yuta just up and dies, there goes a huge part of the sorcerer's strategy. He was the insurance, and now we're gonna have to bet on someone else. And overall, concluding with Megami's character, he cannot be known as the sorcerer who gave up. Megami should have some type of redemption, or else they will just have to kill him. However, let me know what you brothers and sisters think. Is Yuta really dead just like that? We didn't even see Rika's full form, or even when she breaks past her limits. Is Yuji down for the count? Are we gonna have to rely on Maki's soul split katana? Is Akari still fighting Uraume? And if Akari does join in, how much of a difference will he make? I look forward to how the Shinjuku Showdown arc will conclude, because this has been the craziest turning point for both the canon story and in real life for the JJK community, both for the good and the bad. But I love it, and I hope you guys are enjoying it too. However, that's it for this one, my brothers and sisters, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.